Thanks, Rob. You're awesome. You're awesome. Welcome, family. Nadia, a recovered alcoholic. And yeah, we're going to pick up on Bill's story, page 6. I just want to do a little bit of a recap for those who maybe weren't with us last week. Bill he's come to that point in his drinking where he has to drink. He's living to drink, and he's drinking to live. And he'd just been on a business trip where the business partners had said to him, Bill, we're not going to do any work with you. You cannot put a drink to your lips. And he's like, got it. And he goes off and he does. And what happens? When you know you got a problem, but you don't have a solution, you're going to pick up that drink. That's where we're at. Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed, and confidence began to be replaced by cocksureness. That's exactly how it works, right? I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh my, how did I get here again? And for 3-4 days, I don't want to look at my phone. I don't want to look at anybody. I'm just so embarrassed. And just like, why can't this just stop? And then slowly but surely, that alcoholic ego grows back and I forget. And I'm back in control, and I got this. He even says it. He says that confidence begins to be replaced by cocksureness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. We asked you a couple of weeks ago, take note of how many times the word I manifests and how many times it pops up, because what we're interested about in AA is knowledge of self. How self runs the show, where selfishness and self-centeredness take over. One day, I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time, I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it had happened. He walked in to make a phone call, and an hour later, he's like, how did I get you? I didn't come here to drink. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time. But I might as well get good and drunk then. And I did. Typical alcoholic, right? We do what we want, when we want, how we want. And it's actually quite a sad sentence, because it's that when you're sitting there and you're just like, I didn't want to be doing this. And like, yeah, but it's okay. It's okay. Next time, fine. It's fine, because I am, might as well get good and drunk anyway. So where does it talk about that?
In defense of the guy writing this story, and even defense of Jim, when he was recanting or recounting the events, and everyone says, look how many times he used the word I. He was talking about himself. When I talk about myself, I use the word I. When you talk about yourself. So it's not so uncommon that Bill's talking about himself here, and sometimes we get caught up in that because someone says, oh my God, your eyes got too close together. If he was talking about Lois, he would say, my wife, Lois, her, and we wouldn't question that. But he's really talking about himself, so it's appropriate that he uses the word I.
Mute button wouldn't go. Okay, so, but we're talking
Before I
about
interrupt you the next time, let me say one more thing, because I already did. This next paragraph that you're going to read, this is this self-centered aspect of alcoholism. If we could, when you're done with this paragraph, flip over to page 18, where it talks about how our alcoholism affects other people. In this paragraph, he's only concerned with himself.
You'll take us to page 18. All right, let's go. So we're on the second paragraph, page 6. The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. Let's go see where else we talk about the remorse, horror, that feeling when you wake up and you don't want to open your eyes because you don't know where you are. You don't know if you're in your own bed. You don't know what bed you're in. You don't know what country you're in. You don't want to lean on over and see, are your car keys nearby? Where's your car? Where's your phone? The phone mustn't go off. Is there a knock on the door that ice cold? Like, people, do they even knock on doors anymore? I don't know. But if someone knocked on my door, I did not want to get up. So let's go see what they call this. I love the way he puts it here. Page 151. Page 151 in A Vision for Youth, second paragraph. Those feelings, that horror, that hopelessness, the remorse, that, cannot believe I'm here again. I cannot believe I've done this again. He calls them the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. I think we all know those guys pretty well. We know the sound of their footsteps. The courage to do battle was not there. He's worn out. He's beat. He just can't. Those boxing gloves of his are starting to get frayed. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. That kind of describes my whole life. Like I was in an eternal panic attack. Eternal panic attack. It felt like lava was constantly running through my veins. If someone just looked at me funny, I was like, I'm in trouble. I've done something wrong. And it was magnified by those mornings after. Too scared to even answer a phone or a knock on the door, like I said. I hardly dared cross the street, lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? Remember when those guys were jumping out the tower? Bill was like, that's not for me. I'm not going to do it. Like he poo-pooed that whole bit. He was just off to the bar, right? Because that's his solution. Now the suicidal thoughts are starting to come. It's the end. Should I kill myself? No, not now. And then a mental fog settled down. What's that? That's a mental obsession. Life is unbearable. I know what the solution is. I know what your answer is. It's going to be different next time. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and oblivion. Perfect, right? The obsession, the allergy, and what is it? We were drinking for oblivion. I wasn't drinking to have a good time. I was drinking to get away from myself. That oblivion was so welcome. Okay, Bill, page 18. Take us there.
So what Bill just described, and he'll go in a little more detail, not as vivid as it was in the chapter the paragraph that was just read. He's talking about the effect of alcoholism on him. And yes, he's talking about himself. But then in chapter 2, there is a solution. The top of page 18, paragraph number 1 reads, an illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it an illness, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him and no one is angry or hurt. But not so with the alcoholic illness, for with it there goes annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. It engulfs, I think that means consumes or almost swallows, all whose life touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. And when Bill's talking about his situation, all he's talking about is what alcohol is doing to him. And I suppose when you're in that mental blank spot or that world tide of alcoholism, you don't see anyone but yourself, because when you're so consumed with self, there's no one else there. What a lonely disease. Thanks, Todd.
There's the joy of my life, right? Thank you. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms. For mine endured this agony 2 more years. That's the thing with us alcoholics. We will endure this thing for far too long. Why? Because if you go to page 30, what does it say about us? It says, page 30, it's about the 6th sentence. Because we have an idea that somehow, someday, I will be able to control and enjoy my drinking. That is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. And many of us will pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. That's our harsh reality. Sorry. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and the madness were on me. What a powerful image. On me, like that sleep paralysis that we have. It is on us. You can feel it on you, inside of you. I just love that. That is such a brilliant image. Again, I swayed dizzily before an open window or the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for being a weakling. You know, at the end for me as well, I had those suicidal thoughts. I just didn't, you know what my problem is? I'm powerless. From step one, it's I am powerless. Do you know that I'm even so powerless that I can't even kill myself properly? I've tried with the amount of alcohol, the amount of drugs, and the amount of dangerous, violent men that I've put into my world. And despite all of that, despite my best efforts, I'm still here. And here he is, he's standing in front of that cupboard and he's cursing himself for being a weakling. He doesn't even have the power to take his own life or the imagination. There were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Then came the night when the physical, sorry, I just want to say something like there's that flying back and forth, trying to get away. What is he doing? He's trying to get away from himself. But guess what? Lo and behold, there he is. I remember I picked up my first drink at the age of 15, and it was within 14 years. The progressive, fatal nature of this disease had me in its grip. And I moved. It was my first move, which they call it geographical in the rooms. It was my first move from, it was a big move. It was like 1,300 kilometers. And I remember getting into my new place, and for the first 3 weeks, there was this modicum of peace. I thought I'd got away from it because I thought maybe, just maybe, it was the town, right? And I actually found a poem that I'd written to myself one night. I love writing. It's one of the things that I found what I wrote to myself. And it was, I was sitting and the madness was on me. I tried my best. I was staying clean. I was staying sober on my own accord. And the poem says, I heard myself knock on the door. And that ice cold, like, oh, she's back. Where I am, there I am. Doesn't matter where I go. And I've tried. I've even gone to different continents. Yeah. We're looking for the similarities, right? We're not looking for how different he is. We're looking for how we've thought like he has. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish, I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Change these statements into questions for your sponsees, for yourself. Have you experienced physical and mental torture at night? You know, those 2 o'clock waking up, we drink enough to put an elephant down, right? We drink and use enough to put an elephant to sleep permanently. Yet we wake up at 2 in the morning and it's like, you can't put on any lights, because if you do put on any lights, you might really wake up. So what do? You endure the next 4 hours just lying there in your head, in that neighborhood of the thinking but did not know, because you can't wake anybody up, at least yourself. Somehow I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor, lest I suddenly leap. A doctor came with a heavy sedative. Oh man, this is when when I realized that I could drink sedatives with alcohol and how well they worked, it put me down, but how well they worked stopped after 2 or 3 weeks. The problem is I was still convinced that they would work the first time, like the first time they did. So those two were coupled. I always had a good stock of codeine in my bag, a good stock of that stuff, because I was convinced that what it did for me that first time, it would do it for me again. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my sanity. The kinds of blackouts that came from my drinking sedatives and alcohol together were, it was beyond scary. It would literally stop at the first, I would remember the first drink and that would be it. There would be nights with the sedative and the alcohol combination. I could eat little. Listen to what he says here. So he says he was 40 pounds underweight, because why? He says here, I could eat little or nothing when drinking. Guys, come on, we all know Bill was only drinking. Like he was spending 24/7 drinking. Of course he wasn't eating. Of course he was 40 pounds underweight. My brother-in-law is a physician. This is Dr. Leonard Strong, who was married to his sister. And through his kindness and that of my mother, I was placed in a nationally known hospital, Towns Hospital, where the magic happens, for the mental and physical rehabilitation of alcoholics. Under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared. Hydrotherapy and mild exercise helped much. Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally. I knew for a very, very long time that something was just not right with me. Besides the fact that I always felt like I never belonged anywhere, besides the fact that I was sure I was an orphan, besides the fact that I was actually not even from this planet, I knew something wasn't quite right with me. Something wasn't right with the way that I thought. Something wasn't right with the way that I reacted. Something wasn't right with the way that I was constantly vibrating, constantly in a flush of embarrassment. Something was not quite right with me. And, it was confirmed by doctors, because I was constantly, as a young girl, in doctors' offices, because I had a strong body aroma. It was because I was highly anxious all the time, frightened of everything. That fear, that stench of fear came off me from a young age. But it was only when I came into these rooms and I sat with somebody who was armed with the facts that I knew what was wrong with me, that I did suffer from a bodily, mentally, and spiritual disease. It was only here in these rooms with you guys, finally, that I knew what was wrong with me. It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. I was always told she's got such willpower. Like if she puts her mind to things, she just goes for it and she just cracks on, Give me a sport, I'll go to the national levels. Give me a subject, maths, I'll be achieving your 80s and your A's. I had a massive car accident when I was 19 years old. They flew my parents, my dad, because my mom was with me, but they flew my dad up to say goodbye to me, because the doctors said the golden hour, I wasn't going to make it. They'd given me 72 hours. And when I walked back into that hospital 3 months later, after having driven myself to the hospital to go thank the nurses, they looked at me and they were like, your willpower is incredible. And I was like, yeah, my willpower is incredible. People always tell me that. Like, I survived this car accident. I did it. Little did I know that I was being kept alive for something, for my purpose, which I found in these rooms. My incredible behavior. Yeah.
Take over, Bill. The sentence you just read, really looked at that. Since the doctors described that we have an allergy to alcohol and simply saying it's an abnormal response, that most of the people on the planet can eat strawberries with impunity, but there are those that have an allergy to that ingredient, whatever's in strawberries, and they stay away from strawberries. So what Bill's saying here is, in other respects, the will is not weakened when it comes to combating strawberries. But the same doctor who explained we had the allergy came up with the theory that what alcoholism was and what alcohol provided. Alcoholism was described as a low-level thirst for a connection to the divine or a spiritual experience. Alcohol provides that experience. The indelible impression that remains in our mind of maybe that first experience of spirit that we got from drink is the thing that overrides the will to not go back into the abyss looking for that connection. So it's not real difficult to stay away from something that's bad for me, unless, of course, it's a relationship with a restraining order. But when it comes to things that I know aren't good, I find it very easily to remind myself that I'm allergic or endangered with that substance or whatever it is. But when it comes to alcohol, why would the will be so incredibly weak? It's because there's something beyond the will that it offers or satisfies when I indulge. That kind of makes sense for that paragraph. Did we lose another sheet?
It makes a lot of sense. Thank you. That's why I got you here. That's why I got you here to make a whole bunch of sense. All right. Page 7. Second paragraph. We're almost at the end of that paragraph. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself now, there's that resolve, that alcoholic resolve, like, okay, now I got it. Okay, now I got it. I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months, the goose hung high. So that's a little bit of superstition over there. If the goose flew low, then there was some bad juju in town, okay? If the geese flew high over the towns, good juju in town. And, when I was preparing for this, I was like, I've never seen that before. I've always seen the goose hung high, and I know that it's superstition, blah, blah, blah. But it makes me think of something that I read in We Agnostics. Let's go see what it says in page 51, We Agnostics. It says here, excuse me. It says in the realm of the material, men's minds were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. That is my alcoholic mind. I am fettered by superstitions, traditions, old ideas. That's what keeps me blocked. And this just makes so much sense here. Like, he's got self-knowledge, like this now, he's like got everything in line. Like, he's got the self-knowledge, all of this, everything's in place. Like, this stuff being in place like this is going to keep me sober. the mental gymnastics that goes into just staying stopped. If I do this, then I'll stay stopped. If I walk this way, then I'll stay stopped. If I hang out with these people, I'll stay stopped. The things that we do, the lengths that we go to. All right. I went to town regularly and even made a little money. Surely this was the answer. Self-knowledge. Like I said earlier, in AA, the only business we got about self-knowledge is knowledge of self. We want to know how you know about your selfishness and your self-centeredness and how it shows up and how it runs the show and how it takes part of the actor. That's what we're concerned with. But it was not. For the frightful day came when I drank once more. We can concede all we want, but if we got a step one experience without a solution, the day comes that we will drink again. 100%. If you're a real alcoholic of the hopeless variety, 100%. If you're walking out there without a solution, the day will come that you pick up a drink again. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. After a time, I returned to the hospital, town's hospital. This was the finish, the curtain, it seemed to me. My weary and despairing wife was informed that it would all end with heart failure during delirium tremens, or I would develop a wet brain. That is our reality. Well, it's one of our realities. Another one is being locked up in bottom block or ward C. She would soon have to give me over to the undertaker or the asylum. They did not need to tell me. I knew, and I almost welcomed the idea. It was a devastating blow to my pride. I, who had thought so well of myself and my abilities, of my capacity to surmount obstacles, was cornered at last. Now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. I thought of my poor wife. Really, Bill? You're just absolutely like epitomizing this, the selfish nature of an alcoholic. After everything, now he thinks about Lois. What I would not give to make amends, but that was over now. I just want all of us just to take a little breath here, because this is probably one of the most profound paragraphs, and every single time I get that feeling, it's that reminder, and I immediately am transported back in time. So let's all transport back in time to this feeling, because I know that I'm going to be looking at a lot of writing in here. Well, I'll be with you now. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. Rock bottom in 4 sentences. Thank you very much. All right, go for it.
I'm aware that I may have attributed the phenomenon of craving and the low-level thirst to the same doctor. For those that are listening to the recording and are going to write the editor, I'm aware that it was Carl Jung that talked about the low-level thirst and Dr. Silkworth that introduced the phenomenon of craving. I stand corrected. I also looked up the term the goose hung high, and it says it's an old archaic idea, like Nadia said, or superstition, if you will, that things are or will be very pleasant, desirable, or merry. Everything is looking up. It's an allusion to the notion that geese fly higher during pleasant weather.
You gotta love these words in this book. Like, I think I'm gonna start talking about, man, oh man, the goose is hanging high. And that's gonna be every day for me, right? Because I get to live in a day that's amazing every single day. All right. Thanks, Bill. So, what's this paragraph all about? Bill has conceded to himself. He's had his wife beg him. He's had very literate and trained doctors say to him, "You are doomed." And finally, Bill's got it. Now he really has got it. Now he knows. He's licked. The problem is he ain't got no solution. So we got to go back into the drinking again. I'm sorry, guys. Here we go. He's not done. Trembling, I stepped down from the hospital, a broken man. Fear sobered me for a bit. Fear does work. Fear does work. It can keep us sober, only for a bit. Then came
that the post that Rob put in the chat for those who are just listening was a letter or a statement. Let me not misquote again. That Dr. Silkworth had written in his handwriting, and then it was reduced to a typed or a legible copy, where Bill had been to see him for 3 years. And initially, Dr. Silkworth thought that there would be hope for him. But as these attempts and the progression of the disease went on, he began to lose hope, right? Is he the one who told Lois that she might want to get an undertaker involved or commit Bill for the rest of his life? So the good news is this: later on in our book, it says most of us have to be pretty badly mangled, or maybe many of us. So don't hold me to the description of those of us that have to be badly mangled. So if you've been struggling, and Alcoholics Anonymous is the last house on the block, be of good cheer. If it's the first house, I might not be done because I haven't tried the other 17 addresses before I got to the last house on the block. So here's a guy who's doing everything in his power, human resources, to solve a problem which he knows he has, and he still has found no solution. Isn't it amazing that if I find myself anywhere on that road to devastation, the highway to hell, that there's an Alcoholics Anonymous at my destination? And do I also take advantage or take it for granted sometimes that I know you guys are here, you've demonstrated that you're established. I'll be back, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, but some of us don't make it back. That's the insidiousness of it, is to believe, okay, well, if I ever get hurt again like that, I know where to go. I'll go to Alcoholics Anonymous. But like you said, let's take a journey back in time to 90 years ago, where there was no Alcoholics Anonymous. There was no definition of allergy and obsession. There was no spiritual remedy that, like Steve says, we can duplicate over and over and over again. Anytime we're willing to apply these tenets or principles in this book, we can reproduce, reenact, and re-experience the spiritual connection. We're not just getting saved once, we get saved over and over, hell, as much as we want. And the good news about alcoholism is I want more and I want it again. Isn't that amazing? The solution is exactly what the problem mandates.
I told you, we got a God that really loves us. He knows us. He's like, well, you got the disease and more, Nadia. I'm going to give you more, honey, and more, and it'll be, more will be revealed, right? And there's actually some reference to this now. We're coming to it. Thanks, Bill. Thank you. All right. So fear sobers him up a little bit. Then came the insidious sanity of that first drink. And on Armistice Day, so here's just a little story. I might get it wrong. It's okay. Just bear with me. Bottom line is, I want you to picture it's Armistice Day. He is an old soldier, and he's on a ferry. He's on the way to the golf club, and he gets chatting with one of the guys who are in the artillery. And I think that's where Bill was as well. And they get chatting, and Bill starts telling him about this insanity in his life that he's almost been locked up. He's been in hospital. He's emaciated. You can see the man smells. You can see he's not doing well. And he's telling this guy that he's not doing well and that it is alcohol, that alcohol's got him licked. And things that he's tried, and he's done. But he's obviously getting a little bit of vicarious pleasure with the soldier, and they're talking about days gone by, etc. And guess what happens? They stop and they go over to the local speakeasy on Armistice Day. If you're an old soldier or a veteran, you get a free drink, and they put it in front of Bill, and without thinking, he takes it. And the guy looks at him and he goes, man, after all the things that you told me, you surely got to be insane. Yeah. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere, or I'd stumble along to a miserable end. But how dark it is before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last book. I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. So just a quick little description. That is the description of fourth dimension, guys. If you're going to hear fourth dimension, you've heard people say fourth dimension, don't stress. Don't, it's not like some highfalutin thing that's out of your reach. It's very simple. Here it is. It's happiness and it's peace. But sorry, we're a bunch of alkies and addicts. We want to know what's the deal. There is something here that we got to do. That's why he says here, happiness, peace, and why would he come to know usefulness? Because there is a modicum, there is self-sacrifice here. We can find these things through being useful to others. That's our new life. That's what we're going to find. We're going to be rocketed, catapulted. This isn't a slow thing. This happens, and like Bill says, it happens many times. There's a spiritual awakening with many spiritual experiences dotted throughout the journey. Okay, so I've just given you a whole bunch of hope, but I'm sorry, we're still drinking with Bill, and we're still lonely, and we're still at the jumping off point. Near the end of that bleak November, which was also Bill's birthday month, by the way, his belly button birthday month, I sat drinking in my kitchen. With a certain satisfaction, I reflected, here it is, and it's going to be made, there's going to be reference made to this 3 times. It's the thinking, because this disease centers in our mind. It says in the book, now look here, I reflected that there's enough journey. He's alone in his kitchen. His wife's making a slender earning. He's sitting in the kitchen. He's alone. It's done. He's done. And what is he doing? He's wondering, where else did he hide the gin? Is there more gin in the house? It's got to be somewhere. He's thinking about drinking. He's thinking about the drink. To carry me through the night and the next day, my wife was at work. Lois is now completely supporting him because he's done. I wondered, here it is, he's thinking again. I wondered again, that thinking about the drinking, whether I dared hide a full bottle of gin near the head of my bed. This is all he can think about. Where is the other bottle? It's probably running out in front of him. He's got like a little bit left, and he's just like, where did he hide it? Where's it hidden? Where? Oh man, I know that feeling. I know how I would search for crumbs on the floor, car pulls, floor pulls, anything that resembled a speck of something. Your beer from last night, I'd swig it back. I don't care if sometimes there'd be cigarettes in that can. Oh, it was the worst. I would need it before daylight. Let's flip these into the questions. Is this your experience? My musing, there it is. There's that thinking. 4th reference was interrupted by the telephone. The cheery voice of an old school friend asked if he might come over. This is Ebby Thatcher. And you're going to hear now about an old school friend, his old drinking friend. These guys got up to some ridiculous stuff. Ebby's been in a lot of trouble because of his drinking. There's a 3-strike rule in the state that they're in. Third time that you rock up at court for drinking, you get put in the asylum. Like, that's it, no questions asked, okay? You get locked away there. And Ebby and Bill, they've got a little bit of history. They hijacked a plane. I might be telling the story wrong. I am an alcoholic. I don't catch a fish this big. I catch a fish this big. So this is an old drinking buddy of his, like one of his mates. They've even been to war together. And he phones him and he's so excited. And the reason this is such a profound story, because many of us who just couldn't get it the first time we came into these rooms, so we kept coming back, relapsing, coming in, going back out. For many of us who are sitting here experiencing the joy and peace that he's speaking about, who are useful to others, who are sponsoring, who are carrying the message, who are doing the deal, I know for a fact that if I spend some time with you on a call after this meeting, you're going to tell me about an Ebby Thatcher that brought you into the rooms and gave you that hope, that if it could work for him, it's got to work for me. I know I had that experience. And another thing, we've spoken about this before, when there's squiggly writing, you know this is important. He was sober. You know, the thing is, he wasn't. How did Bill know that he was sober? Because he was happy on the phone. Us dudes, we're not happy near the end. We're wishing for the end. And this man is happy because he's on fire. He's sober. Man, that is happy and sober? What? Could that be real? All right, well, I don't know. Try it. It was years since I could remember his coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumor had it that he had been committed for alcoholic insanity. Okay, but he's not. He's out free, and he's free and happy. I wonder how he had escaped. That could be the only answer, right? He's escaped. Of course, he would have dinner, and then I could drink openly with him. Unmindful of his welfare, I thought only of recapturing the spirit of other days. Because isn't that what it's like? It is like a spirit that comes upon us, right? The other days, the excitement that we feel when we're going to a party or a pub or a 21st. And there it is. There's that alcoholic selfishness. Here's a guy who obviously is a miracle because he's happy, he's sober, he's phoning Bill. And what is Bill thinking? I can't wait to have a drink with this guy. He goes back to thinking, because, you know, we're always thinking, we're always in this fantasy place like, oh my God, do you remember awesome time that we had that jag where they chartered an airplane to complete a jag? His coming was an oasis in this dreary desert of futility. The very thing, an oasis. Drinkers are like that. We're a little bit dramatic, right? Oh my God, this guy's like coming like an oasis because he is in the desert. I mean, this man's dying. He's dying, but he's not dead, and he can't die because he can't kill himself. And he has a little bit of joy coming into his life.
Would you take a minute and read that post that Rob put up? I found it again.
Read it, please.
Yeah, I'll read it. Do you care? You don't mind, do you? So there's a statement in here, and it comes from a book. Is it correct, Rob, that it comes from The Strange Obsession? And they're talking about Dr. Silkworth's statement. Maybe it was a letter or conversation to Lois. But it says, the benign little doctor's face turned grave as he began to speak. When Bill first came to this hospital 3 years ago, I felt that he might be one of those rare cases who might recover. I hope that when he better understood himself and the nature of his illness, he might win out. In spite of his several severe relapses since then, I have gone on hoping. For as you say, he desperately wants to quit, and his will to do so is very great. But now I'm discouraged. I'm afraid he's going to be like nearly all the other alcoholics who come my way. So when we talk about in the doctor's opinion, it says this was a great doctor's opinion, or they're letting us know medicine was trying to treat the internal malady from without with the belladonna and these other treatments that Rob has so graciously put up on the platform. But this doctor has hope that Bill may be one of those rare cases. Now it's not a rare case at all. Of the alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. Of the other 50%, about half of those came back after they had a few more scrapes and they recovered. And of the last quarter, they would be in contact with us on a regular basis till the end, but even they showed improvement, because there's something to be said for the spiritual atmosphere in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, but the transitional solution that takes place when you're exposed to the fellowship of the Spirit of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I mean, here's a doctor who's got hope because Bill's got a lot of things to live for. Much did Ebby and Roland. These were kind of people that had something going for them. And now all of a sudden they don't have a whole lot going for them. They have more going against. But it's just interesting that the doctor, hoping against hope, Rob, right? That Bill would be one of those that could recover because he desperately wanted to, and the doctor knew he did. And he couldn't seem to get it. They just didn't know what it was. That's real important when I'm sitting here thinking, wow, I'm sitting here with 20 people today that there was none of them when Bill was seeking relief. There were people that have had profound alterations that I believe Dr. Young told that he was hoping to produce in Roland, but he'd never been successful with an alcoholic of that description. And what Bill Wilson has now become is an alcoholic of that description. And I expect most of the people that we associate with today would be deemed alcoholics of that description. But for the grace of God, it says in our next chapter, there originally it said there would have been 100 more convincing demonstrations. Now it says thousands, and when they write the 5th edition, it might say 1 million or so. But the reality is, do I lose connection with the fact that I was in the hopeless, chronic, latent stages of alcoholism when God picked me up and placed me among you guys? It's easy to take for granted that you're going to be here, like I said, that I know what I need to do now. And the reality is, 90 years ago, they had no clue what was necessary to duplicate what we've so freely been given.
You know, Bill, thank you. You've just got me thinking. Many people, I'm sure, were praying for Bill. Prayers that covered that man, right? And you know what? You guys were praying for me. That moment of silence that we have before a meeting starts and when a meeting ends, before we do the serenity prayer, when everyone has a moment, that moment of silence is when you all were praying for my soul to walk through those doors. Just like I'm praying for the next soul to walk through these doors. I see we've got a few minutes left. I'm just quickly gonna, on these 3 little sentences here, the door opened, he stood there, fresh-skinned, glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. What had happened? Let's go see. This is Ebby shouting at Bill that he has a solution. But Ebby hasn't said a word yet. What am I talking about? Nadia, what do you mean he's shouting at Bill, but he hasn't said a word? Let's go see. Page 18. Page 18, the 4th paragraph. 4th paragraph, 3rd sentence. that the man who is making the approach, Ebby is making the approach, he's phoned Bill, he's knocked on his door, he's there, he's with his friend, has had the same difficulty. Oh, yes, Ebby has had the same difficulty. Ebby's been qualified. He's been qualified in that first little introduction to him. That he obviously knows what he is talking about. That his whole deportment shouts that he is a man with a solution. Not my words, not my clever way that I can quote out the big book and say that it's on this page and no. His whole deportment shouted at Bill, fresh-faced, glowing, eyes alight. The man's on fire. He doesn't have to say a word. Bill knows. And you're going to see, we're going to end it off here, because when we pick up again next week, you're going to see how Bill struggles with this miracle in front of him and all the clamors that argue for his attention. All right. Thanks, Bill. Let me hear what you got to say.
Listen in 2 more minutes. What has taken place that we've forgotten who's responsible for making the approach? See, if I come to Alcoholics Anonymous in the middle of the road, on the broad highway, and I'm not at the end of the road, I might even be on the acceleration ramp, not only won't I see the necessity, but I won't be compelled to transmute, to give away something that I've received, because there's not much difference if I come in here with a drinking problem and you offer me a solution. I'm in a not drinking society. I get that. But what happened is Ebby Thatcher was one of those who was about to be committed for alcoholic insanity, at least for an elongated period of time. And he was spared that, and then he was exposed to the Oxford groups, who had a methodology of introducing him to a power. So when he came here, when he came to Bill's house, Bill's describing the light that he saw in Ebby's eyes, the starry look, the starry-eyed boy was all right, let him rant. And what it was talked about is when Bill Wilson had that experience, he couldn't contain it. You can't be in the presence of God. And Rob put up another thing where he talked about the presence, the power, the majesty, the description of being in the presence of infinite power and love. And what happens is now we rely sometimes on the newcomer to make the approach to us. And guess what the heck it is that we have? Why is it incumbent upon the new guy? Because he might not know what I have. He might only know that he doesn't want what he has anymore. But what they were saying is, you were going out to give this thing away. They didn't realize the necessity of sharing this message for their own survival. What happened is they had seen the light and they couldn't contain it, and they were passing it on. Now, all of a sudden, we get kind of smug. I'm sitting in a meeting with 80 people, and I say, well, let Nadia go talk to the new guy. I don't want to be bothered. He might throw up in my car or ask me for a few bucks to feed his family for the day. And that's what was taking place. It was a conversion experience that was being offered without knowing that they couldn't, like the gaunt prospector, like it talks about in the family afterwards. Ebby's pick struck gold. He didn't try to hug the treasure to himself, though. He immediately was giving it away, but not for the meaning of ensuring his own sobriety. He wanted his friend to have what he had. And Bill looked at him and thought like he was crazy. To be continued. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Love you both. Thanks for your input. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thanks, Ron, for being here with us tonight. Q&A time. Now you get to talk and we get to listen.